Hi, I'm Aaron McDaniel, co-author of the book Global Class and managing partner of the company of the same name. And along with my co-author and co-founder Klaus Vihe, we help companies increase their valuations and market caps from $1 billion to $100 billion through effectively expanding international markets. Now, our Wall Street Journal best-selling book is a playbook for global growth. And in all our research and speaking to hundreds of executives from the world's fastest growing companies, we found that international expansion was often a very solitary experience. And it's our goal to make it a shared experience. And that's why I'm here, to help you better understand the most crucial aspects of global growth and how to use the global class mindset instead of the legacy mindset to successfully reach global scale. Now, today I wanted to talk to you about the two big mistakes companies make and how they can avoid them when they're looking to expand internationally, and offering some great strategies on how you can build the right foundation for global scale within your organization the right way. Now, the two ways that companies look at things, the two mistakes they make, one, which is happening less now, is what we label as the company way. So in our book, we start off with the story of Walmart and their expansion in Germany. So Walmart, the well-known American retailer, was interested in the German market. They acquired a couple companies in the space, and they decided to implement the company way of doing things, the American way in some sense of doing things. And it led to disastrous results. So they attempted to use the value proposition often used in America of low prices. Well, in particular, in the grocery segment, Germany already had some of the lowest prices in all of Europe. They also attempted to implement American products like prepackaged meats, which the German consumers were really skeptical of because they like to see their meat being cut from a butcher. And then finally, and most comically, they attempted to implement the Walmart culture where they were very, very friendly. There's someone at the door waving and saying hello to you, going up to customers. And culturally, that freaked Germans out. They're like, whoa, give me my space. Just let me shop. And ultimately, in the process, Walmart, in attempting to use this company way of doing things in another country, lost over $1 billion and a lot of time in the process and having to divest. And, for a long time, this company way or country way, the American way of doing things, was something that was attractive, in particular for Japan. For a long time, because of the reputation of having quality products, people wanted Japanese products. But in our research, in talking to these hundreds of executives, we found that things had changed a bit. And in particular, one thing I remember is a conversation we had with a former executive of Talabat, Middle Eastern last mile delivery service, food delivery service company, and he was from Turkey. And he said for many years, Turkish consumers wanted anything American. But in recent time, they realized, no, we have our own unique challenges, our own unique local context. And so if you want to sell something to us, you need to be respectful and understand and adapt to that local context. And so this company way of doing things is often born out of a hubris that comes from being successful in the first markets, and in particular, if it comes from a big market. And this mindset shows itself when people at the company start saying things like, well, we have universal product market fit or universal value proposition. Or there's a big focus on disrupting the local market and doing things differently and attempting to replicate the model that worked in that first market somewhere else. So what happens is these companies tend to forget about their iterative agile roots and how it took so many iterations and pivots for them to find initial market fit or fit in their first market. And just as a side, we very intentionally don't use the word home market. We use the word initial market because depending on where you're from, your first market may or may not be your home country. If you're from a big country, then it's higher likelihood that your home market will be your first market. But if you're from a smaller country, there are many examples of successful companies that have come from smaller markets and used a bigger market as their initial market. So these companies will say, well, let's just do what we did in that initial market. They'll forget about how they need to adapt in order to find the right market. And companies over time have tended to realize this. This mistake is less common. I think intuitively we kind of understand that we live in a diverse world. Anyone who's traveled even a little bit kind of has a gut instinct that this type of mindset is not right and needs to adapt. But that second mistake is much more common. It's harder to recognize, often until it's too late. And in some ways, this second mistake is masked as a good thing. It often fits within the mindset and MO of a lot of different executives. And this mistake is to prioritize speed and iteration. So the idea being, we're going to choose a market and we're going to do whatever it takes to find traction and product market fit and success in that market. Go ahead and change whatever you need to change. So if you compare these two mistakes, they're at either end of the spectrum. It's either we're going to shove our model down the throat of every country in this world and do it the company way. And on the other side is this one where it's like, let's just, we're going to change whatever we need to be successful because we recognize that countries are different. And often this mindset is baked into a company. If you look at Meta or Facebook, they famously had said, move fast and break things. Well, in some respects, that's the worst of both of these type of methodologies together. The break things is sort of building on this idea of disruption and not wanting to partner with the local ecosystem. And the speed thing, that fast is just, whatever it takes, speed is the number one priority. And so, ultimately, there are two big issues with this mentality. The first is that it seems to work, at least at first. So you make progress, you succeed in your first couple of international markets, then you add another and maybe another, and then all of a sudden a problem arises. And that's the second issue. And that's what we call the wall. So when a company prioritizes speed and iteration, doing whatever it takes to find fit in the market, they basically think, okay, we're doing a pretty good job. We're finding good fit in this market because they're focused on each market individually. But this comes at a big risk because doing really well and doing a good job of creating a business that succeeds in this one market and then this other market and then this other market ultimately means you're doing a really bad job of building a global company. So usually what happens is the companies will prioritize success in these first markets and actually sacrifice their ability to succeed at global scale. And so companies, realize they've created all these different models, and in the process, they've created a ton of complexity. And this is a real key word for us as we talk to our clients, is this complexity is often an afterthought. It's hard to describe a lot of these concepts because a lot of the vocabulary hasn't existed around it. And that's a lot of what we've created with Global Class. But ultimately, you are prioritizing success in these markets, but you're sacrificing building the right foundation for global scale. And so when do you typically hit the wall? Well, it depends for every company, but we found that typically anywhere from the third market to the seventh or maybe even 10th market is when a lot of companies hit this wall. The problem is you're often hitting that wall long before you realize it. So, of course, the faster you figure this out, the better. And there's a client we work with, a large Latin American company, and they only had entered 2 markets before they really figured out, hold on, we need to take a step back. Because the problem is when you hit this wall, you basically have to go and rebuild everything. You realize, okay, we didn't build the right foundation for global scale. Now we got to pull back and actually think about this thing more holistically, right? And when you figure this out really doesn't matter because whether it's after 1 market or 10 markets, it's still really painful. And so ultimately, what is the right way to do things, right? So how do you avoid these two mindsets? Well, first and foremost, it starts with mindset. So don't think about succeeding in the next market. Think about building a pathway to global growth. It's not just success here, then here, then here. It's how do we think intentionally about becoming a global company and figuring out the right path, step by step, country by country, to reach that. So part of that is being purposeful about market selection, purposeful about hiring, and most importantly, being purposeful and structured around the localization process. So to help with that, we created what we call the Global Agile Model and Global Agile Methodology. So the thing is, regular Agile, it works great for one country, but it does not work great in a global context. Like I was explaining with the second mistake, it breeds complexity because you just go and iterate and pivot until you find fit in this market. Then you iterate and pivot and find fit in the next market and the next and the next. Now you have a half a dozen or a dozen disparate models that are really hard to create scale around and better control and understand. And so our global agile methodology and model is one of our 4 commitments for successful global growth, and which is something you can learn about in different models. But this global agile methodology really helps you better understand and manage complexity. And so basically, in order to use this process, and you can look at another video for us to go step by step through each of the details, but ultimately you do the familiar hypothesis development that often happens in the Agile process. You use localization discovery and talking to key stakeholders in markets to truly understand what's happening at the ground level. And we've created some great tools to help with that. One for localization discovery, for example, we call the business model localization canvas, which we can talk about a little bit more in another video, but it's not just blindly iterating. So what it is it's doing more work on the front end, understanding and mapping out the complexity so that you're not reactive. And that's really the big difference between this mentality. When you prioritize speed and iteration, you are completely reactive. You are going, okay, let's get into that market, and then you attempt, with your hypotheses, you just got to change things over and over again. And the problem is, in the process of you learning that, if you kind of go in more cold, is that you are spending more time and more money in the process instead of taking that first step back and truly understanding things better. And so in order to help you understand and prioritize localizations, we have this process we call the localization premium analysis, or LPA process. And also as part of this global agile process is thinking about the scalability of localizations, basically identifying when a localization that was done for one market can actually be scaled and used in another. So as I was saying, proactively managing complexity is the key. Maybe one way to look at this is to think about a scavenger hunt. Some of the scavenger hunts I've seen, group ones in particular, the teams that win are not the ones that immediately go out and say, okay, let's get to that item on the list. Let's go to this one, then this one, then this one. It's the ones that just take a moment, take stock for a second, plan things out a little bit more the tortoise than the hare, if you remember that children's story, and then go. So you can still have that speed after, but it's about just taking that first step first. So not prioritizing speed and adapting, but prioritizing building the pathway to growth. And part of that is building the mindset in the company, that muscle that can be used over and over, but also finding the right pathway, selecting the right markets, etc. And so when you're more thoughtful and proactive about complexity, you are saving that time and money that other organizations are wasting. So one of the key elements of global agile that helps structure this conversation, helps you think about things better, is what we call localization premium. And we use the word premium because there's a cost associated with localizing, but there's also a benefit as well. And so ultimately, these are broken into 2 main categories. There are go-to-market premiums and there are operational premiums. And we use the analogy of an iceberg because often companies think about the top of the iceberg, more of those go-to-market items, as opposed to more of the operational ones. So let's say it's an American company who is looking to expand into Mexico. Companies the team may think a little more simplistically, I should say, and say, okay, let's change from English to Spanish. Let's change from dollars to pesos. Let's change some of our marketing language for better fitting the local context. And we're localized, but there's really so much more to it than that. And so we broke these premiums into 6 different categories, which really have this comprehensive look on everything that you would need to potentially change in order to fit in a new market. So there's marketing premium, things like differences in value proposition, target customer base, competitive landscape, sales premium, which is differences in revenue model, differences in things like customer service. If you're an American company, often an online self-serve help desk or even a chat is adequate. But if you go into a lot of Asian countries, you need to have a physical call center because culturally they're used to talking to someone on the phone. Then there's product premium, where you might have to change elements of your product to succeed in the new market. Great example of that is LinkedIn when they expanded into India. And they needed, because of the lower bandwidth mobile network, it made their graphic heavy app not work well. So they had to create a new version they internally called LinkedIn Lite that was more text-based, that worked on that mobile network. Then on the operational side, there's infrastructure premium, things like your tech stack, things like supply chain for physical products. Then there's administrative or admin premium, corporate entities, taxation, government regulation, differences in local politics, etc. And then finally, organizational or org premium, which is whether the culture of doing business is different, whether you have to hire a new team for that market or not, and also whether you have the right processes to support two-way innovation, communication in those markets. And so ultimately, with the global agile model, we have this 5-stage process, all supported by these processes, which we refer to as momentum builders. And we go into more detail in some other videos about this. But another way to learn more about this too is our masterclass. So we have this comprehensive masterclass that goes through all the details about these premiums, how to manage them with great case studies from top global companies like Apple, Airbnb, Evernote, and more. There are over about 100 videos, over 10 hours of content in these master classes, with some great exercises for you to take this global class mindset and apply it within your job, within your organization. Because ultimately, the goal here, with the help of a lot of these models we're talking about, with the help of this mindset, is to take you from global aspirations to global scale. And so ultimately, the output of this global agile process is the antidote to those two main mistaken ways of thinking. So avoiding the company way, avoiding speed and iteration of all cost, the output being what we call the Global Growth Opportunity Matrix, or GGO matrix. And you can learn more about this in some other videos we have. But what this does is it helps you visualize the pathway from where you're at now to actually reaching global scale. And when you go through that exercise, when we do this with our clients, they're able to better understand how well their company is positioned for successful global growth, and whether they have the right mindset, the global class mindset that we found in common of top companies, the right DNA, the right people, the entrepreneurial mindset, something we talk a lot about. So not just having a growth mindset and company mindset, but having a cultural mindset where there's a sense of empathy, global mindedness, cultural curiosity that's important to be successful in different markets, as well as, in particular, adequate alignment across the leadership team and across functions for how to approach global growth. It also helps you understand how your business needs to change to succeed in the new markets you're targeting. You see, a lot of companies are really good at the market sizing and evaluating market attractiveness, which is obviously very important. But those two other elements that I just mentioned, understanding your organizational readiness and understanding the degree of change, the degree of localization, premium, and complexity that comes along with expanding into each market, well, that's very, very important as well, and needs to be looked at more holistically. And so one thing that we do in working with clients is creating a custom global growth opportunity GGO matrix, which is often the second step, the first step being a more formal assessment where we help you better understand whether you are well positioned in different categories for global growth, that organizational alignment, that organizational readiness. But outside of the different formal engagements we do with clients, we also have a simple and free way for you to understand this as well. So, and that's really helping get to the bottom of, okay, these are great insights, but actually, how do I take this and put it into some action? And so on your own for free, you can go to our website, globalclasscompany.com, and get what we call the Global Capability Score. So this helps you identify if your team and your company has the mindset that is leading you to be susceptible to these two wrong way of thinking, these two mistakes. Again, the company way, or prioritizing speed and iteration. And just by taking the survey, it takes about 7 minutes to complete. You are able to better understand how well your company is positioned for that. And better yet, if you can find ways to get some of your colleagues to take the assessment as well, then not only can you get the good raw score and feedback, but you can see where there's good alignment or misalignment around the right way to approach global growth, which then helps you build on, actually talking about some of these things to get that alignment instead of just leaving it to hitting the wall later, like we talked about. Also, feel free to grab some time to chat with us. Klaus and I and our team love talking to you. If you're working on international at your company and want some guidance on how to overcome current challenges and map out your own pathway, we'd definitely be happy to chat. So, as I said at the top, international expansion is hard, but we're here to help. We want to make this a shared experience for you. So check out all the links in the notes for things like more information about the global agile model, about our global growth opportunity matrix, about the masterclass, and in particular, going and getting your own global capability score for free, to help your company focus on the right things. So again, let's make global growth a shared experience and find a way to help turn those aspirations for global scale into global success.